I am thrilled to meet my newest best friend. We just met a few weeks ago, and I'm so much the better for it. Julie Nespel, PhD, Dr. Julie, as she's affectionately called, is the founder and president of the Mind of a Champion. She has worked with a variety of individuals, teams, and organizations to improve their mindset through principles she developed to help business professionals and athletes deliver their best performance when it matters most. Interestingly, she trained under the great Dr. Bob Rotella at Virginia, who I've read many years ago, one of Bob's books, recommended to me by a client. And I think people will really enjoy hearing Julie's insights and how she helps people in all areas, not just sports, but using sports a bit as a metaphor to really enrich business leaders, all types of people excel in what they do. So, Julie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know people are going to really enjoy hearing from you.
Thanks.
So, let's start. Cheerleader at Oklahoma State University. How did you find yourself getting a PhD and getting into what then had to be a brand new world of performance psychology?
Well, I usually leave the cheerleader off the professional bio. So thanks for just ripping that band-aid right off.
Come on, it's
Uh,
history.
so I will tell you how I ended up. I had the most amazing advisor at Oklahoma State. So I was sitting in her office one day and she said, "You need to hear about sports psychology." So I was a psychology major, loved the brain. I did not think I could be a counselor because I just felt like I would take the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so I knew I didn't really have the personality for that. And so she said, "You need to go read books about sports psychology or articles." So I went to the library and I read professional journals, like the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology. And they were research papers. And I spent a couple hours in the library during the week, unassigned reading, and I couldn't get enough. And when you're 19 years old and you're doing unassigned reading, you have found your passion in life. And so at that moment, I knew what I wanted to do. I was able to keep the psychology that I loved, how your brain is so cool and how your brain works, but do it in a different way. And so that's how I ended up in the field.
That's fantastic. I mean, I love this space. As you know, you and I could talk for days and days without eating or sleeping. But it's you won my heart by being so kind to my son, Will, who is in at the University of Edinburgh studying performance psychology. So I've been getting a dose of that, and I think some of what encouraged Will to do that is kind of what I do for K&L Gates and watching that. So fun to talk to you about this. So I think when I think of a sports early psychologist who wasn't a psychologist, I think of John Wooden, somebody who you read his principles and you think about how they apply in your daily life, and it's so helpful. Who is the one or two people who resonated with you, who kind of were both philosopher, if you will, and coach in real life?
There's so many people that I've just really gravitated towards. Just anyone. I mean, honestly, early reading, I read some of Tony Robbins stuff, and I thought that was really interesting, and then the Price Pritchard's books, all of his great leadership material, and As a Man Thinketh, and just really some solid principles that, we have a choice in the way that we think. And I was just really drawn to that type of information. It's the growth mindset before the growth mindset existed. So anything from sports to just business writers, I would gravitate towards that. Even, athletes who came out of a slump or, came back in the second half of the game or, on a few events and still finished strong, even though they had a bad start. I just loved that type of determination and ability to really coach yourself differently.
That's a great segue to one of the initial topics that I want to cover, an athlete in a slump. So to take Marcus Simeon, who plays baseball for the Texas Rangers and just signed an enormous contract and started the season hitting, one of the worst hitters in baseball for a period of a couple of months. What do you do with somebody like that who is a demonstrative, he finished second in the MVP voting, I think, at least last year or the year before. What do you do with somebody like that who has a track record of success, but just can't seem to get back to where they were? How do you break down that coaching?
Sure. So the very first thing that we have to do is we have to take the word slump out of your vocabulary. If you're in a midlife crisis, we're going to take the word midlife crisis out of your vocabulary, right? So that's very first thing that we're going to have to do. And then the trouble that what we do when we're in a slump, whether it's in sales or in sports, is we try to get back. And we're not great at going backwards. We're really good at going forwards. And so I'm going to, whoever I'm working with, I want to know where we're going. And anytime we start talking about going back somewhere, I'm going to say, wait, we're not time traveling. We can't do that. What does forward look like? Because, a lot of times, and we've seen this with our professional athletes, they have a marriage or a baby or life changes. And when life changes, your schedule changes also. And so we've got to learn what forward looks like so that we can pursue forward with passion. I've talked to many athletes at 23 and they're like, I have to warm up longer. And I'm like, dude, you're 23, you're old. Of course you have to warm up longer. You're not 17. So we need to know what forward looks like, and then we can figure out how to go there. But I won't ever take someone back.
No, that's interesting. And the other thing you talk about, and we just happen to be from different faiths, but I love your use of something bigger than us as a part of your pedagogy. You talk frequently about the fact that we don't control all the outcomes. We control the process. Talk a little bit about that for somebody who hasn't done all the research that I've done.
Sure.
Talk about that thinking about things as not in your complete control.
Sure. So here's what I'll tell you, just real simple information is that the biggest mistake we make in confidence is having confidence in an outcome rather than our ability to create an outcome. So, outcome, there are too many variables, too many things that are outside of our control. And so, if we can be confident in our ability to create it, I'm going to give a presentation. Can I be 100% confident that the audience will enjoy it? Nope, I can't. But what can I be confident in? My ability to do the research, to have a thoughtful plan, to outline, to read cues from the audience and adjust my tempo or my pace or enthusiasm. If I'm standing over a 3-foot putt, can I be 100% confident that I will make it? No. Can I be, actually, there's three things you can put your confidence in putting, which is rolling the ball on your line, reading the green correctly, and your speed. I like your ability to roll the ball on the line because you have the best feedback from that, the easiest feedback. So if it rolls end over end, you rolled it on your line. So I can put 100% confident that I can roll my ball on my line. Well, sometimes 100% confidence still doesn't lead to the right results, but at least I have information that can change what I'm doing. And so in sales, this is such a great business development. Can I be 100% confident that you'll work with me? No, too many variables, right? But what I can do is I can be 100% confident in who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. I can know my product or my services, and I can be 100% confident in my ability to ask good questions. And that confidence will allow you to move forward. So, big picture, we don't control everything, whether you're coming from a faith standpoint or just the reality of life, we don't control everything. What we have to do is break it down and figure out what we can train. And if we can train it, we can be confident in it.
Oh, that's fantastic. It reminds me of a picture of the obituary of Admiral Stockdale. And I worked on the Ross Perot 1992 presidential campaign. And I got to be close with Admiral Stockdale because there were all these legal things we had to do to get him on the ballot with Mr. Perot to run for president. He had to not be a Republican and be an independent and all that stuff, for those who remember as far back as 1992. But he was one of the great Stoics and was the longest running prisoner in the Hanoi Hilton, as I recall. I mean, they broke many bones. All he had to do was give up some information on people, and through that, he stayed true to the principles that he had, and he didn't control whether he lived or died or they tortured him or whatever. He could just stay true to those principles. So I love the concept that there's so much anxiety in the world. And if you can let go and follow the process, and it was so much fun reading what you've written and spoken. It's so great. But why golf? I mean, obviously you trained under Bob Rotella, and he was a guru. I know he coached the Ryder Cups and he's written so many books, but why is golf such a good metaphor for business?
Honestly, because so many play. Like I've worked with professional fishermen and rodeo and tennis, which would be another common sport. But as we age, and I'm speaking to business professionals, we don't do as many pickup basketball games. We don't have as many kids who are in the fishing club. Golf is just the easiest language for everyone to understand.
Mm-hmm. And it also strikes me that it is because your motor skills are so fine in golf, it is the most susceptible of deconstructing. So that you say, look, you've just got to be able to hit your line. That's a very fine process that you need to practice, but you need to be in the right mindset. If I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I don't make this putt, I'm not going to win the British Open and I'm not going to make, $10 million plus all my sponsorship money. That isn't relevant to whether you're going to hit your line or how you're going to read that putt, is it?
True, very true. But I would argue not just golf, but fishermen, anglers, they're throwing their line out. And if they don't bring in a limit, they're thinking sponsorships as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's across the board. But anytime that your brain is not exactly synced with your watch, you don't have the right focus. So when I'm thinking about what I'm going to be at the turn, or, what place I'm going to be, or my sponsors, I am so far distracted. Or if I'm meeting with you and I'm thinking about, if I close this deal, my commission is, that I'm not no longer in the moment.
That's right. No, that's great. Okay, so you start in your coaching process, you start with one area of growth. You don't say, "Hey, what do you want to accomplish?" You say, "What is one area you want to grow in?" Why is that the beginning of your coaching?
Because the things that I talk about will apply to all areas of life. But if we do this shotgun approach, we'll make just marginal improvements. And the place that I learned this was when I went through my own book. I have a journal, a 21-day journal, and the very first page it says pick one area of your life. And I'm like, I wrote the book. I wrote down 3 different areas, And so 3 days later, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not really doing this anymore. So I went back and I thought, that was really good coaching. I should listen to myself. And so if we could just start with one area, then we'll be able to apply it to a bunch of different areas. If I'm working one-on-one with someone, I'm going to get, in the first meeting is going to be more of an intensive, and I'm going to hear everything. And then there could be an overarching theme, like I need to, be more assertive in all areas of my life, or more confident in all areas of my life. Or it could be I'm firing on all cylinders at home, and most of the things at work are good. I'm just not a great leader, in team meetings, especially. And so that's what we're going to focus on. So I can help people get to what that area is, or sometimes people already know what it is right away.
It's interesting. You're helping people be precise so that they can figure out what they actually can work on controlling. I love that. So you also talk a lot about confidence, and my words, not yours, reframing a narrative. That voice in our head that tells us something sometimes has got us convinced that we're not good at something when it's really not answering the question that's being posed. Talk a bit about how you work with people on their confidence.
Yes, so confidence is, it's a game changer. I remember hearing a speaker one time who asked if is it price, is it product, or the confidence of the seller that has the greatest impact on close ratios. And it comes down to the confidence of the seller, which is just some coaching. Anytime you're going shopping with a really confident sales rep, you're going to come out with a few more dollars spent. So we work on confidence because it carries it everywhere. Two things that I really help people with on confidence is you have to be confident in what we can do, what we control, our skills, our plan. We can be confident in a plan. We know that a confidently created plan is consistently executed. A lot of people will procrastinate or second guess, and then they blame their skills when really they were never confident in the plan to begin with. And so that's a disservice we do to ourselves, is that we think that it's our talent when it really has nothing to do with our talent. It was our plan that we just didn't buy into. So we have to be confident in our skills, our talent, our plan. And then the other thing that I really work with people on is this 100% confidence. So 95% confidence is 5% doubt, and doubt always changes what we do. Again, second guess, procrastinate, hesitate, whether you're in sports or you're in business. So I want people at that 100% confidence. And I get pushback on this often because they say, well, I don't want to be arrogant. And I said, well, confidence and arrogance are not the same skill. And I have a great story on that because I went to Oklahoma State with Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was an exceptional Heisman Trophy winner in college. He went to play for the Detroit Lions, one of the really most confident men on the football field that you'll ever meet. But Barry was this very humble man as well. But Barry Sanders played at the exact same time as Deion Sanders, another very confident person. But the portrayal of his confidence was slightly different. And in fact, Deion in interviews, he talks about the cologne that he wears. It's called confidence, and he wears that every day. So I am going to push for that 100% confidence because it's confidence in things that you control. And then when people still give me pushback, I say, okay, you're going in for surgery tomorrow, and your surgeon leans over you and goes, oh, yeah, 92% confident today. I mean, how many people are staying on the table? So if we want other people to be 100% confident, we have to be 100% confident. And even in parenting, when you are 87% confident and you're talking to your 4-year-old knows, and they are going to push every button to get around it. But when you have that face of non-negotiation, like you are 100% confident in your plan, your kids will obey more frequently.
Yeah. And how do you find, because I hear in what you're saying, especially in a team building concept. So I know you've been the coach of the SMU football team, which has been, I mean, the death penalty kind of interrupted my joy of SMU football, but that was my team growing up. And today it would still be, if they were in the running, don't tell the University of Texas where I went to law school, but that would be my college football team. But how do you translate that? Because I hear a lot of authenticity in what you're saying. So if the head coach of a team is confident, but the players think it's kind of made up confidence or not fully authentic. So how do you find your voice to be authentic and confident and it's inspirational?
So I think we leak out doubt all the time. People just don't realize it. We just say words like maybe, possibly, kind of, I think, try. And so if I'm talking to a football thing and I'm like, I kind of think you should do this, like, no, or maybe this would be a good play to run right here. I mean, so we leak confidence all the time. And I call leaders out on that because as a leader leaking confidence, it grows exponentially within an organization. We just have to be aware. Try became like, people understood what that meant for a while, and kinda is the new try. Kinda gets used all the time. So we have to be aware of it. And then when I find myself saying words like kinda or try or maybe, I pause and then I say, what do I really mean here? And do I really believe what I'm saying? Is there something I need to research or train so that I can speak with confidence?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I hear a lot of it is the precision with which you talk about your objective. I remember hearing you say that the head coach of the football team doesn't look up at the scoreboard and have them focus on the scoreboard. He has them focus on the next play or a scheme or something very precise that they can put their confidence behind in executing, which I think is fantastic. It's why golf, by the way, we were rooting, but the listeners may not, that I had a thrill of a lifetime in going to the 150th British Open, and my son in particular was rooting big time for your Oklahoma State fellow alum, Victor Hovland, to win. He unfortunately did not pull it off, but he was close. He played great. But it is interesting. Golf to me, and I know fish, I know there's so many metaphors to it. There are all sorts of environmental conditions and everything else, but just the precision in dealing with wind and the elements, the different courses and things like that. It's so fascinating. So talk a bit about, because I know you spend time with people, even in a business setting on a golf course. You go out with them, you sit with them, you coach them. Talk a little bit about, not how you'd coach one of your great golfers, but how you coach somebody like me who, is a 15 handicap. What would you be focusing me on a golf course that would translate my head into a business setting?
Thank you for that question. Because one of the favorite things that I like to do is to go out on the golf course with a business professional, because I can learn more in 4 hours of golf than about 2 months of this kind of a coaching relationship. I can learn about your decision making, what you do with success, what you do with failure, how do you handle yourself under pressure? Do you hydrate during the day? When I'm talking to people like this, and that is a key factor to success in life is drinking water. But a lot of times it doesn't come up in a Zoom or a face-to-face conversation. So it's such a great way to learn. And really, I tell everybody when I, jump in the cart with you, the first few holes are going to be a little bit weird. I'm not playing. I'm just chit chatting with you. I'll pull the pin, but we'll settle in and then we'll start looking at what you do. I'll ask about your pre-shot routine. I'll ask about, well, where do you want the ball to go here? And if you say, well, I don't want it to go out of bounds left because 3 years ago when I was out there, I lost a ball and then I hit three more just like it. And so that's not really where you want to go. So, I'm just taking notes and listening. We can do really easy confidence lessons on the green, that whole confidence in 100% confidence in rolling the ball on the line. And then we'll, as we're going to the next hole, we'll talk about, well, what would that mean in business development? Or what would that mean, depending on what your job is? And then really the best question that I can ask is at the end of the day. And I say, what did you do because I was here? What did you do differently because I was here? And then whatever you do, I'm writing it down and think, this is your magic, because I'm here. It's like if the Superman nanny were sitting at your house, you would do things differently, which is actually what you need to be doing all the time. So I think that that's a valuable question for any leader of people, whether you're just, I'm going to sit next to you today and I'm just going to work here, but I'm going to just be listening and observing. And then I turn to you and I'm like, hey, did you do anything differently because I was sitting here today? That's your secret sauce. That's what you need to keep doing. So I love being out on the golf course. And we'll talk about really talking about that coaching voice, what you say to yourself, how do you evaluate what you're doing? How do you pick targets? And then how do you handle success and failure?
Uh-huh. And is there any particular kind of personality you have a harder time cracking than others? Or there, what examples, I mean, without naming names, coaching that took a little bit longer for people to get it. What was that blocker that kept them from getting it?
Well, when people come to me because they have a desire to improve or change, those are easy. Anything from, a junior high athlete to a senior executive. Like, I know I want to change. We're going to figure out a way. People who have a little more trouble with me is the ones who really want to know what not just A looks like and Z looks like, but they want to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.37, like they really want all the details ahead of time. And coaching is more fluid than that. And so I will not do a prescription on day one when I have no idea what we're going to uncover on, day 13. So we'll have some ideas of the direction that we're going. The hardest person to crack, and I've been more selective in my practice these days, is the one that was sent to coaching. So be it a 13-year-old kid who got dropped off by his mom, we don't do those anymore. Or even in your first line leader, your, executive level, who someone has decided that this person needs to change. If there is not a compelling reason, and a compelling reason can be like, look, you're going to have to make some changes or you're not going to be here any longer. So that can be compelling. But if that person has not embraced changing, it's really hard to get anywhere.
That's so interesting. And do you work with people, like, because I don't know the answer to this, but do you work with people on kind of some interpersonal blockers? As you know, I manage a large team, and sometimes people have a hard time being, to Scott's expression, radically candid with each other. They have a hard time sharing disagreement. What are some principles you work on among those interpersonal issues that make a team sometimes less effective than it could be?
Sure. One of the things that I believe is that there's this pie of life of perspective. And if we look at the whole pie, that's everyone's perspective. And everyone gets a slice of pie. Some people's piece of pie is really big and others is pretty small. And when you're sharing the same piece of pie of mine, like when we see the world exactly the same, I would most likely call you a genius or a very smart person, right? Because we see the world the same. Clearly, you are very smart. When you see the world differently and your piece of pie is over here, that's where conflict happens. And what people need to understand is conflict isn't about taking a different piece of pie, it's just everybody's pie getting bigger. So if I can get you to be curious and ask questions, I can help resolve that. And I know you're smiling because this is what you do. And my favorite question is, interesting. Tell me more. The number of times I use interesting in a week is entertaining. But I do think it's such a powerful question because if I can really hear myself and go, interesting, which is pause. I don't really look at the world the same way you are. Tell me more, and then really listen to understand it. I realize that maybe we're just a little bit off, or there are times. I can remember a salesperson I worked with who we saw the world very differently because I came as an educator and this person came as a salesperson, and we just really saw the world differently. But as I understood where she was coming from, I could say, "Oh, of course that makes sense. Yes, I will include you on the next phone call." So if we can just be curious, we can. Conflict happens because the conversation stopped. If we can continue the conversation, and I do believe in agreeing to disagree, if we can continue the conversation, we can get to a place where the relationship stays whole.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And it's funny because yesterday, I rarely will record multiple podcasts in a week, but this week I've actually done three, believe it or not, just because of travel schedule. And so yesterday, I recorded a podcast with this brilliant woman who's a diverse general counsel of an artificial intelligence tech company. And really, her answer about how we can be more inclusive and bring people in to the team and change the way our teams look was the same answer as yours. It was finding the connection points. And I, came up in that podcast too. I'd always watch my dad and kind of be super embarrassed as he would talk to any stranger, in a cab or waiting the valet at the parking the car or whatever. And then I caught myself doing it. And it's the concept that the more we can learn, especially about people who are in very different arenas than we're in, the more we can connect with people. So I think that's awesome advice, and it helped me put two and two together in terms of some of the skills that can accomplish that curiosity. Right, it's not just the curiosity with the person you're talking to, it's the curiosity with other people that might help you understand the person you're actually in that moment talking to.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I do to just keep my brain healthy and engaged is I like to work puzzles, but I like to work puzzles in life. So where can we find connections? And the one that's popping out to me is I remember a really fantastic restaurant in Tulsa, a Vietnamese food restaurant was next to a donut shop. Well, the Vietnamese shop is not open in the mornings. And so they shared space. Like they created this win-win to be able, because the donut store is not open at night. And I can remember the first time I saw that and I was like, this is genius, the way they're working together. And then, just like sports relates to business, you take that concept and this is a win-win. Instead of, fighting with your neighbor next to you in your business space, you create this win-win and it's amazing and great things happen for everyone. And so I love finding things like that in one industry and then thinking, oh, I wonder how this could work somewhere else.
That's great. Okay, so we're going to take you to, you're talking to a young lawyer. They're starting their career at a firm like K&L Gates. There's so many different practices and things they need to learn. but they first need to learn how to practice law. Talk about the evolution of their goal setting, culminating with their ability to be able to talk to a client potentially about either bringing in business that they would do themselves or bringing in business for the law firm. Give them some advice on how they would think of framing that over time.
Okay, so do you want to play the role of the young lawyer?
Sure.
Okay, so that'll be easier. So
Yeah.
I would, just start with like, I know what you do. So, young lawyer Craig, I know what you do, and you've told me where you want to go, which is a partner. So, what are all the buckets that have to be filled in order for that to happen? I know business development is one, but it's only one. What else?
I have to be a really good lawyer.
Okay.
So I have to be good at learning from all kinds of people in the environment I'm in, whether it's the client, the partner I work with, the other lawyers I work with, the staff. So I've got to learn how to get that information from them. I have to understand the industry, the business of where I practice, I would think. And I have to, to go back to one of your principles, I have to have the confidence that I can accomplish what I'm setting out to do, whether it's a memo for an attorney or a presentation for a client. I've got to have confidence that I can figure out what needs to be done for that and I can execute on that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So I broke good lawyer into staff relationships, business acumen, information assimilation, presentation, and documentation, like memos and things like that.
Writing skills.
Writing skills. Okay. So let's just start right there with writing skills. On a scale of A plus to D minus, and A plus is as good as you will ever be, not you compared to anybody else, but just as good as you will ever be. What's your current grade?
As in the pretend world?
Yes, you pretend
Yeah.
young lawyer, Craig. I will continue to say that so that everybody listening understands.
I think I'm a pretend lawyer, B, but I'm as a writer generally, but as a legal writer, I may be a C right now.
Okay. So do we need to divide those into two buckets?
I think they're different styles of writing for a brief to a court versus a email to a partner or a client or some. Yeah, I think they're different kinds of writing.
Okay. Staff relationships. A plus is as good as you'll ever be. What would you grade yourself right now?
I think I have a lot to learn because I don't know what they do as a young lawyer. So I'd say a C.
Okay. And let me break that one down. Ability to connect with people and learn. What would you grade yourself?
Well, young Craig was good at that. So I'd give myself a B.
Okay. And intentional scheduling of doing that.
C minus.
Okay. Yeah. So then presentation skills. A plus is as good as you're ever going to be, not compared to anybody else, but what you've got in you. What are you now?
So, I was a debater in high school and college. That was my sport, so to speak. And so I was good on my feet. So I would give myself a B for general presentation skills, but for the environment I was in, I would still say a C because debate, you speak too quickly, you have to slow down. You're not talking about international affairs or whatever I would be debating about. You're talking about law and practical things. So you've got to transition that to the new world.
Sure. How about just information assimilation? A plus to D minus.
B plus.
Business acumen.
C.
Plan for business acumen.
C. C minus,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. So our lowest ones, we have a few C's that jump out. So legal writing, intentional staff relationships, legal presentations, and business acumen. Of those, one, two, three, four, what would give you the biggest lift the quickest? Like you need it now, you need it in the future, but it would even help you right now.
Probably seeing someone really good in one of those spaces do it so that I could kind of think about how I could naturally fit my style with how they did it. So seeing excellence in action.
Okay, say that one more time. Which one is that one? That's on the legal.
Yeah, business acumen or communication skill,
Okay.
communicating
Okay, great. And I'm going to pause for just a minute and let you think about it because you said probably. So I want to make sure that you're 100% sold on that.
Right.
Do you want to change your answer or do you like that answer?
No, I like the answer. I
Okay.
can stay.
So then the first question is, and this will be where we'll pause. After you do this, we'll pause or we'll play. So what does your A plus look like?
My A plus looks like me sitting down with the general counsel or business decision maker of a major company and having them think I have value to provide them in the execution of their business affairs.
Okay. So talk to me more about what it sounds like your grade is dependent on their opinion of you.
Great point. I mean, at the end of the day, the outcome will, but I think my execution of it would be that I would feel comfortable that I know their business. I would have done my homework in understanding their business and what the challenges are as much as I could do without a conversation. I would be good at asking or excellent at asking them questions that would elicit information that I'm lacking, and that I would have a command of the resources that I could offer to them that would put them in the position where they might want to see my law firm as adding value to their problem.
Okay, so that's a great confidence in your presentation, confidence in your research, both the what's going on in the business and of the person, excellence in asking questions. And so, if that's your A plus, what is one thing that you could do this week to get you closer to your A plus?
I could ask the library at K&L Gates to pull research on the target company and the target client to understand what they do and just make sure I know everything I can know before that meeting without asking questions so I could frame the right questions.
Okay, awesome. And about how much time commitment does that sound like?
I bet it's on my end. I mean, the research end, they're probably pretty efficient in today's world of technology, but I would imagine 3 to 4 hours of prep.
Just curious, do you like 3 hour blocks? Do you like 3 1 hour blocks? Do you like, what's your sweet spot?
Probably 45 minutes.
Okay.
I don't sit still great, over a 3 hour. My wife, who's a trial lawyer as well, can sit for 12 hours and not notice she hasn't eaten or, but I can't do that.
And are you, which kind of brain is this for? Do you need like your best brain, which is morning for me, your who cares brain, which is like anytime after 6 p.m., or do you need your medium brain? Which brain needs to be used on this one?
At least medium, but preferably I'm like you, my morning brain, because I need to be facile with the information.
Okay, so we're looking at 4 45-minute blocks in the morning. Doable?
It is. Yes.
Okay. And if I knew what was going on and I knew you had 3 weeks to do it, then I would, like, let's look at, these
Yeah.
3 weeks. But so here, let me tell you about what we did. So
Yeah.
first we did an assessment. I think that it's really important to know where you are before you know where you're going. And the very easiest assessment I can do with people is A plus to D minus. We've grown up with that our whole life. Two important things on that. Number one, it has to be your A plus, not my A plus, not your senior partner's A plus who's been doing this for, 25 years A plus. What's my A plus? So when we start there, then no matter what grade somebody gives me, I let it be. So if you gave me a B and I'm like, wait, seriously, are you kidding me? You have never crossed a C minus in your life. Like, I'm not going to do that. Or the other one is, you give yourself a C, and I'm like, oh, sweetie, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, that is not my job. I'm just going to let it be whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because the real value is what does your A plus look like? So as soon as I can get that conversation started, guess what we're doing? We're turning towards the future. So we need to look at what this A plus is. And if I know a little bit more and we had talked longer, I can insert some categories in here. Let's say I've already talked to your supervisor and I know some things that you need to be good at. Then I could even divide it down a little bit more so that we can elevate the importance of that. So there are some skills that I have if I have a little bit of background. If I don't know you from anybody else, I'm just going to go with what you said because, again, it will work. So I'll circle back over some next conversations and say, hey, let's talk about that legal writing. You gave yourself a C. What have you been doing to work on that? I mean, I think, 15 minutes a week of being intentional, we can improve that. So I'm going to keep circling back. But the real thing that I have to get you to do is tell me what your A plus looks like. If I
Yeah.
can't get you there, then it's going to be hard work. And nobody wants to work that hard.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And A plus is so process driven, it's not outcome driven. So you really wring out of that process the outcome and you really focus on the deconstructing of the pieces of the process. It's brilliant. I mean, I can see why. I think you and I may have talked about this, but I remember one of the observations. I'm a huge sports fan. You can kind of see behind me in fact, it's not sports, but you see Deserved Victory by Winston Churchill, that old war poster, which is really kind of what you're doing, right? You may not win, but you need to deserve winning. But I remember watching Dirk Nowitzki play basketball, and early in his career, he was always looking for a call. So he'd either just take the jump shot or he'd drive to the basket and he'd gripe at the refs if he didn't get the call. And then there was this like it switch in him that turned where he just drove to the basket. And if he got the call, great, he'd get an extra free throw. And if not, whatever. And he'd make the basket more. And he was a complete double threat at that point. They had to respect, they had to lay off him so he could shoot the jump shot better. And it so fits in with what you're talking about. You can be the best basketball player you want, but if you don't have the mindset of breaking your thought down and going, oh, I don't control what the refs are going to call in basketball. So I have to just put myself in a position to get a foul, whether I get the call or not. And then if I'm worried running down the court, griping at the refs, I'm probably not playing great defense. So it's so profound to think how you do that. Thank you for going through that with me.
Sure.
You would
Well,
say
and
something.
in
Yeah.
the example where you said, basically it was the other person's opinion that decided your score, like
Yeah.
how they responded to it. And we do that all the time. And so what we have to do, so that means if you don't hire me, I don't get to have confidence tomorrow. That's not fair, right?
No,
So
it's
because if you're getting 100% close ratio, you're not talking to enough people. Like
yeah.
you have to get some no's to know that you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to tie, our vision of success to really our own evaluation of asking good questions, knowing the environment, those kind of things.
So let's say somebody comes to you and some of this is baked in from how they were parented or they're stuck in that narrative, right? And so a little bit of failure really drives them crazy. I assume that's where the psychology component comes in. But how long does it take to unbake? I've heard you say, 60 actions creates a habit. I might have gotten that a little bit wrong, but how do you unbake this behavior that may be deep into our childhood?
That's a really good question. So more than unbaking, I'm baking. So what I would do is we work on what the new behavior, the new thought. We'll put up some triggers, cues, or reminders to be able to check your thinking. Big fan of that. And then, research says 21 to 28 days to create a habit. New research says 60 because we multitask so much. The habit will end up in there, but you'll see results before that real strong habit forms. So it just is about being intentional. Here's the best way I can show you. Clasp your hands together. So are you a right thumb on top or a left thumb on top?
Left them.
It doesn't mean anything, but we should make up something to say what it
Yeah.
means.
I was
So,
going to say, what does it mean?
so shake it out and then do it again. Same thumb.
Yep.
Yes, habit. Now make them go the other way. You can do it, but it's not comfortable.
No.
So what we have to learn is when we're changing our thinking, changing our habits, a lot of the things we do are super comfortable. We do them without thinking. But when we're asked to do something different, we're creating a new habit. And you go, oh, that's not comfortable. Nope, but it's not wrong either. So if we do it long enough, it becomes comfortable. And that's what we have to do is we just have to get comfortable. When I had shoulder surgery in 2019, it was on my right hand. I'm right-handed. And so about a month before surgery, I started using my left hand for, brushing my hair, brushing my teeth. And what I found is as soon as I knew I could do it, I wanted to stop. I'm like, oh yeah, I can use my left hand. But I knew that that was not what I needed. I needed it to be a habit. So the first day that I grabbed my toothbrush with my left hand, I was like, yes, I actually grabbed it with my left hand. So, we can do things and train things. We just have to get past that being uncomfortable. If somebody tells me they're going to be uncomfortable going to a business development meeting, right? I'm like, okay, rather than fix the being uncomfortable. I mean, we'll talk about confidence and everything that, but if you're going to feel uncomfortable, I'd rather you feel what your shoes feel like in your feet. Because if I have you super focused on what your toes feel like inside your shoes, it's going to be hard to feel uncomfortable. So, I mean, there's little strategies like that
Oh
we can.
yeah. I mean, that's what great trial lawyers would take you down to the courthouse and say, look, I don't want your first time in the courthouse to be when you've got your first hearing. So come down here, see what it's like, see how big it is, how where your computer would go. Of course, when I first went to the courthouse, there were no such things. But
Well, your
but
legal
yeah,
pad, no.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that's great. Okay, some quick questions because I mean, I could talk to you for so long that it would not be fair to you. So you've got a day to go and enjoy your weekend, but something somebody could do completely outside, like, I mean, you may have just given the example right before your shoulder surgery, but something they could immerse themselves in that you've used to understand the concept of discomfort where it's not as high impact. So, yes, going to a hearing, I'm ready for the hearing, but how could I kind of train myself to understand what it would be like to be uncomfortable? Was there something to do?
So I'm going to broaden it just a little bit from
Okay.
uncomfortable, and I'm going to say it's hard to learn in a crisis.
Okay.
All right. So, what do we do when we're running late and we've got a 2-year-old and we're putting them in their car seat and we're like, why can't you buckle your car seat on your own? And your
Yeah.
kid's like, because I'm two. So, we can't learn in a crisis. But on a Saturday at like 9 o'clock, we get up and we're like, we're going to learn how to buckle our car seat today. And then we're going to get donuts afterwards. And if we could just take that for all of life, we would be good. So we just have to think ahead and we say, you know what? I love hosting in my house. I'm not a huge fan of going to a dinner party because I just don't know what to do with myself, right? So I'm going to find out who else is going to be there. I'm going to think of 4 questions that I can ask that person. And I'm going to give my husband like, here's our signal that I need you to walk me away from this person. So you're just pre-gaming really is what that uncomfortable is all about. If we had a little bit of forethought on what we're doing and we notice, like a lot of times our uncomfortable isn't a surprise, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So if we could figure out what it was that we're not looking forward to, I am dreading, dinner with my in-laws, I am whatever it is, then we need to have a game within the game. We need to pregame just a little bit.
That's
Take it
brilliant.
off your calendar.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Thank you. Okay, one book doesn't have to be your favorite book, but it's one book that somebody who is wants to be a better teammate or to help the team be better or kind of start to get comfortable with business development or sales, like one book or two books, whatever you think, thought leadership.
Okay, so I'm a terrible person to answer this question because I believe somebody gave me permission really early in my career to read a chapter of a book. And if I get something out of it, I'm going to be like, check, that's great.
Yeah.
My new favorite thing is Read It For Me, which is it's a summary, but it's explained
Yeah.
video summaries. Love Read It For Me. But I do have to be disciplined and I have to apply something before I get to go on to a next book because I could consume all day long and then never change any behavior. So what I would say on that is every single thing that you read, you can learn from. So it could be your kids, fourth grade novel that they're reading. Like just read it and then figure out if there's anything in there for you. That's challenging yourself to think differently. I mean,
Yeah.
there are great business books out there, but I think we can read anything and apply it. Uh,
Yeah. And so do you recommend diarying? I mean, like I'll write down, I have Penzu. And so when I'm reading a book, my diary will be kind of half my observation on a book and just sticking it in there. So I kind of try to remember what I learned.
Yeah, I think writing it down is a big thing. If we ever go back to the list, great, double bonus. But just writing it down, I mean, it does something to solidify that in your brain. Then you
Yeah.
can scroll through. Like I keep a lot of notes on my phone where I'll just write a headline or something I heard. Judd Hofstra, who does some work with Blanchard companies, he wrote a book recently, and we collaborated on a chapter. But he talks about he brings out one of those giant, publishers clearinghouse checks. He brings out one of those giant checks and he writes whatever the number is for the company. It's like, how many people want this? And everybody's like, me. And
Yeah.
then he lists the number of phone calls you have to make. It's like if we had a check for your college degree, right? Here's what the money you're going to get. And then you write down every reading assignment you're going to have over 4 years. It's how many people are willing to do this to get it. And everybody goes, how many times you're gonna have to say no to a social event so that you can do this. I mean, so there's so many things that we can learn. We just have to be able to apply it differently.
Okay, last question. And this is a tricky one, but it's one I'm sure you've had and thought about. But is there something, we all have failure. I think back to my failure, although now I'm going to think about it a little differently now that we've talked, but something that didn't go my way in life. Anything that you've had not go your way that instructed your pedagogy around how you coach people today?
Yes. So there have been so many things in my life that I really created a 3-step. Like you just have to recognize, own it, right? So just own it, whether it's a conversation with your spouse or something in business. When you recognize it, then you refocus and you're like, what would I have done differently? And I think we get stuck on this because when we refocus, we do the should have, would have instead of eject the movie in your mind and put in a new movie that says, I did this. And so we're narrating a new movie. And then we just watch that movie over and over. That's how we get past that feeling. So, for example, in business development, I had a client that I knew very well. And in the sales process, I became an unpaid consultant. And so we never closed the deal because why would they close it when I gave them everything for free? And, own it. I've taught on it before. I know the principle well. So what would I have done differently? And in the second meeting there, I would specific words, here's what I would have used and, play out 2 different outcomes. They could say, oh yes, please do this. Or, and I don't think we'll move forward. Either way, I could play out either one. I'm going to play out the desired outcome because that makes it more motivational for me. And then I have to watch the new movie rather than the old movie.
Oh.
Old movie, I don't feel good when I'm watching it. Like it just, there's so many, I mean, bleh. And then the new movie, when I watch it, I feel strong. I feel confident in my business development skills. I know I've made an adjustment. I've learned from it. It feels good to learn. And I watch that new movie with the outcome that I desire. And that one is going to be more likely that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's easy as it is you had to drive off in the woods to the right, eject that movie, stick in a new one. And often when people stick in a new one, it's like this VHS quality. And I want 4K, like surround sound. I want the real movie in your mind rather than this like, bad VCR tape that you put in.
That's so great. I've never heard visualization so well described for a business setting. Thank you. You have been incredibly generous with your time, and I know our listeners are going to love, love, love listening to this. So thank you, Dr. Bell.
Looking forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Me too.